What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Sniper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we actually pull out all of the weapons that we possibly can as we cover the Kensei Monk, and I hope you guys are looking forward to this. This is a very unique way to play a monk, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But before we jump into whether or not it's good, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of 5,000 by the end of this year. I think we can do it, but I need your help in order to get there. And of course, the best way to help out with that would be to share the video with your friends. And of course, make sure that you click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. The Way of the Kensei Monk is very special in that it actually allows you to use a lot of different weapons that normally you would not be able to have access to. Now, I will say that this is somewhat mitigated by the dedicated weapon feature available to all monks, but the Kensei actually gives you much more flexibility over that one feature, so it is still definitely worth talking about. Is it going to be better than some other monk options? Let's find out. Starting off at level 3, we get Path of the Kensei, and this actually is one feature that just includes 4 features. So we get a lot here at level 3. Starting off, of course, we get Kensei weapons. And so with this, we can choose 2 types of weapons to be Kensei weapons for us. We get 1 melee weapon and 1 ranged weapon. Each of these can be either simple or martial as long as they are not heavy or special, and we actually can include the longbow in this, which normally could not be included. We gain proficiency with this if we didn't already have it, and they become monk weapons for us. And we also then will get to choose more weapons, melee or ranged, as we reach new levels in the class, of course levels 6, 11, and 17. Next, we get Agile Parry, and so when we make an unarmed strike as part of our attack action, while we are holding a Kensei weapon, we can use it to buff our AC by 2 until the start of our next turn. Next, we get Kensei Shot, and so we can use our bonus action to deal 1d4 extra damage of that weapon's type, as long as it is a ranged weapon, and we can of course use this until the end of a current turn. Finally, we get Way of the Brush, and this gives us proficiency in calligrapher's supplies and painter's supplies. Now, this is a lot to go through just for one level, but there's a lot going on here in a really good way. So the way that we think about these Kensei monks is that instead of our bodies being the only way that we can really feel our ki flowing, is we make the weapons extensions of ourselves, and that's how we use our ki in order to make these better. There's a lot of really cool stuff here. Number 1, we get to use a lot of really cool weapons. Our weapon restrictions are pretty much thrown out the window except for heavy and special weapons. We'll come back to that in just a second. But this allows us to be a melee-based monk that can use some really cool weapons that you normally wouldn't be able to. And we can be a ranged monk, which is normally not really that great of an option, but this gives us some really cool benefits to actually doing that. And so a ranged monk is not necessarily a bad thing. It definitely opens up our options a lot wider than what we normally would be able to. Being able to gain +2 to AC is always going to be a really good thing. We've already got the unarmored defense, and so we can have a decent AC from that, then add another +2 on top of that. Might just save your life. It's the same thing as having a shield, and of course it's spammable. Of course, we get Kensei Shot, which gives us a little bit of extra damage. I don't know that it's necessarily worth holding this back, is the restrictions on the weapons. We can't use things like pole arms. We can't use like great axes. We can't use, why is it that we can't just open this up to all weapons? I feel like this could have been so much better if we just let the monk do whatever it wanted to do for this specific subclass. And I really don't think that it would have been all that crazy, because that would have given us reach. Because let's be real, we don't want to have to take a whip in order to have reach. Now, of course, you could do like a chain whip kind of thing, which is already like a monk type thing anyway. I know there are a lot of monks that actually use the chain whip type thing, which is really, really cool. But I would have loved to have had a ranged option like the glaive, like the halberd, like something like that. I know it's not monkish, but it still would have been really cool. So I've really got to give this a 9 out of 10. If it didn't have those restrictions, I probably would have gone higher, but I just kind of can't feel like I can do that. This is really good because it allows us to skip several steps in our somewhat slow progression of our martial arts die. And so this allows us to deal a lot more damage right off the bat. And so I can't complain too much about that. At level 6, we get one with the blade, and this gives us 2 features. Number 1, we get our magic Kensei weapons, and so all of our weapons that we use as Kensei weapons will now be counted as magical. This of course comes online at the exact same time as our ki empowered strikes, and so we're just making everything magical all in one go, which makes sense and it's really cool. We also get Deft Strike, and this allows us to deal another roll of our martial arts die whenever we hit with a Kensei weapon for the cost of 1 ki point, and we can only do this once per turn. So these are both actually pretty great. If you don't have a magical weapon yet at this point, this just gets you around a lot of the resistances that you're going to be running into at this point. Starting at 6th, 7th, 8th level, you're going to start hitting a lot of creatures that have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. And so you getting around that non-magical resistance is really, really nice, especially here at level 6. Deft Strike is also not too bad for 1 ki point. Being able to roll an extra martial arts die on top of whatever your weapon is dealing is not too bad. I probably wouldn't spam this necessarily, but it's really not terrible for the cost. Obviously, you're going to get more out of, say, like a flurry of blows. Of course, you're going to deal more damage that way, assuming everything hits. But this is just kind of free damage. You're not having to necessarily worry about whether or not the attack hits when you apply this ki. You know this point is not going to be wasted. Overall, though, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. This is a really nice feature, giving us magical weapons, which you may or may not have. And maybe you have some kind of restriction that you've placed on yourself that your character won't use magical weapons. It's part of your discipline. I don't know. It's up to you. It's your character. But then you've also got the Deft Strike. And so dealing a little bit of extra damage is never a bad thing. So overall, this is really nice. At level 11, we get Sharpen the Blade, and this actually allows us to give ourselves even more bonuses to our weapon attacks. So we can spend up to 3 ki points as a bonus action to grant 1 Kensei weapon a bonus equal to the number of ki that we spent to attack and damage rolls. And so you can have a +1 weapon, +2 weapon, or +3 weapon in that. It lasts for 1 minute or until we do it again. And of course, this does not affect any kind of weapons that already have a bonus like this. This is also pretty good. Now, I will say at level 11, it's very possible that you have found a magical weapon. In fact, it's incredibly likely. But maybe you're against having crazy weapons or something. I don't know. But it's incredibly likely that you've found something like this. But on the off chance that you haven't, or maybe that gets confiscated, you have to lend it to a party member, anything like that, you've got this. So this isn't bad, but it is kind of late in my opinion. So it doesn't quite get the ranking that I would like to give it, just because it might not always apply to every character in every situation. For that reason, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. It is a little expensive for what it is. A +1, +2, or +3 is expensive in ki. And of course, you may already have a magic weapon at this point, and you may not even want to use this feature at all. Finally, we get Unerring Accuracy. And so at level 17, if we miss an attack with a monk weapon, doesn't even necessarily have to be a Kensei weapon, but just a monk weapon on our turn, we can re-roll it. And so we can use this feature, of course, only once per turn, but honestly, that's not terrible at all. Being able to just re-roll an attack for free once per turn is pretty nice. Now, obviously, we normally wouldn't be the biggest damage dealers out there, but we have access to some really cool weapons that we normally wouldn't be able to use as a monk. And so we can deal more damage a lot more reliably than some of the other monks that are out there. So this is actually a pretty useful feature for this specific subclass. Overall, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. We are still a monk, and so there we are limited in certain ways of dealing damage, but this is still going to be something that is going to be used probably more than you think, especially as you reach higher and higher enemy ACs. So what do we think of the Way of the Kensei Monk? This monk's actually pretty cool, and it takes a lot of the big restrictions of monk and really gets rid of them in a lot of ways. Number one, of course, we are normally really restricted in what type of weapons we can use. Of course, this was somewhat mitigated with dedicated weapon, which we would get at level 2, but this opens it up even further, and honestly, it's cool. It's good that we're able to do something like that. Yes, I do wish that it had gone further and we could use heavy and special weapons and that there was no restrictions on this. I still don't think it would have been that big of a deal, and a monk with a polearm is not going to be that big of an issue, at least not any more so than a fighter or anybody else that's using one. So that's one gripe I have. The other thing is that this allows you to deal a decent amount of damage at range, especially being able to take something like a longbow. Of course, normally you wouldn't be able to take this, but now you can, and that's a really, really cool thing to open up for those of you who want to use a ranged weapon. This also kind of just throws the suggestion in your face to use something like a firearm. Now, in fairness, we could take firearms already with dedicated weapon, but let's be real, Kensei is the one that kind of screams using firearms. But it's still pretty cool that you can do that and really enhance it in these meaningful ways. Of course, one with the blade makes everything magical, which is pretty awesome. And then Deft Strike deals a little bit of extra damage. It does cost ki, but it's still not too bad. And then Sharpen the Blade, of course, can give you those little bonuses if you don't already have a magical weapon. Overall, this is a really cool subclass, and I really enjoy all of the features that are presented here. Overall, I've got to give this an 8 out of 10. It's pretty dang good. It's not busted, it's not overly strong, but it gets the job done, and it really improves the monk kit in a lot of really meaningful ways. Do you agree with my ranking? Let me know down in the comments below. Later this week, we are going to be building one of these, and listen, I've already gotten the comments asking me when I'm going to do a firearm-based monk build. It's coming this week, okay? This is the gun-based monk, and it has to go for the Kensei, right? So all of you have been asking for a gun-based monk. It's coming in this week's build. I am very excited to show you what I have come up with, and I think you guys are going to love it as well. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe so that you don't miss when that build goes live later this week. Stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.